Oh boy, I have a love-hate relationship with studying on my own initiative. My frugal soul cries out against the cost of traditional education, and my minimalist tendencies weep at the formal time and effort bloat that surrounds them. At the same time, I've grudgingly come to admit that there's more to it than historic inertia. Getting a prepackaged mix of a curriculum, a study group and a teacher, deadlines and social proof at the end can be the difference between perpetually dreaming of the perfect self-study path versus actually completing a less than perfect but still valuable course. This interview that you're listening to that's about to come up is with Shane Radliff, a friend of mine I've been working in a mastermind for quite a long time. And every week, for months on end, he'd set goals all around one project that held the answer to the self-study problem. I didn't realize it at the time, and I don't know if he did either, but he was creating a way of solving most of the problems of trying to learn from reading books and self-practice alone. When I realized this, I got very excited. You see, in a matter of a few months, he managed to become very knowledgeable in a pretty arcane field, have intelligent and insightful conversations with many of his heroes, and create such incredible proof of his work that I think it blows a university degree out of the water, in my sincere and admittedly biased opinion. I'm Philip Frey, and I'm here to tell you about the interview learning system, the name that I gave to this approach. With me is Shane, more accurately, a recording of Shane and me. So I'm going to say this to make the transition smoother. Shane, welcome to Valiant Growth.
Thanks for having me back on, Philip. I'm happy to be here.
So last time we talked about Vonu, and we went pretty in depth. But Vonu is just one part of your direct action series. Mm-hmm. And that is what I want to talk to you about. It's a project that you put a lot of effort in and a lot of time in. How long did it take to produce this series?
Yeah, so the series started on January 3rd, 2016, and it went all the way to July 24th. So it was about 7 months.
Yeah, I remember in our mastermind every week's next goal was I edit some direct action series or clean them up, or it was basically an ongoing thing for a few months, right, at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very, very valuable series, but I'll be honest, Philip, about halfway through it, when it didn't seem to ever end. By the time it was done, I was happy to be done with the project. But yeah, it was a fun project, but yeah, it just never ended. It seemed like.
How many episodes came out of it?
For the direct action series proper, there were 27 episodes. On the version I'm giving away for free on the Liberty Under Attack site, libertyunderattack.com/freedom now, there's actually an additional 8 or 9 episodes that were direct action oriented, but not in the direct action series proper. So probably around 35 total or thereabouts.
Right. So what is the series about, and what was your motivation to put in all this effort over time?
Yeah. So first, I mean, it was kind of a 2-step process. So before getting into it is a process. So I'll start with something else that we did before that, called the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action. So at that time, we were reading Albert J. Nock's book, Our Enemy the State, and he laid out 2 different means of making money: the political means and the economic means. Now, obviously, the political being the appropriation of wealth produced by others, and the economic being the production and exchange of wealth. So, at that time, we were aware of, the political means. I'm sure you're aware of the political means, too. Most people are well aware of those. But for the economic means, direct action, some individuals were aware of, some of them. But we realized that there wasn't a directory of all of the economic means solutions or all of the methods of direct action. So that's what we did. We put together this directory called the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action. Your listeners can find that at libertyunderattack.com/FUDA. That's FUD as in dog A. And so essentially what the FUDA is, it's a value-free directory. So we don't, obviously, I like some of these better than other ones, but the FUDA itself is a value-free directory. So there's no value judgments in there. It's not ordered by preference or anything like that. It's just all of the possible ways to find freedom now without asking for permission. So we had that list, and I mean there's almost 100 of them, and I'll be honest, man. I I was aware of some of these things, some of these potential solutions, but others I had kind of a superficial understanding. So like there was no possible way I could implement some of these things into my own life, let alone, promote these ideas to my listeners. The next step was, well, why don't we do a direct action series and like kind of go through this entire list and, try to get a better understanding of all of these things so that we can, have a real shot at finding freedom now. So that's what we did. I mean, we started the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action, and then we worked to the Direct Action series, and on July 24th, that concluded. But solutions are still the focus of LUA, so it's still kind of intertwined. There's no formal series, so to speak. So that's kind of how it came into fruition.
Are they all interviews?
I would say probably 90 to 95% of them are. There were a couple episodes, like one of my former co-hosts, Stan, he's really keen on 3D printing and survivalism. So I just kind of talked to him about that for both of those episodes. Then there were a couple that we just did, in-house, the hosts of Liberty Under Attack. So maybe like 3 or 4 that weren't interviews, but for the rest of them, yes, they are all interviews. The
listeners who listened to the previous episode will know this, but what is direct action and what is indirect action? What's the difference there?
So direct action is essentially, just like a way to find freedom now without asking for permission. So it's taking the initiative yourself and creating your own freedom.
What do you mean by asking for permission?
The political means: petitioning governments, voting, lobbying, begging the masters to please be nicer to us. Whereas the economic means or direct action, these are things you just pick up and do. You can pick up and use Bitcoin tomorrow. You can begin your path on financial independent early retirement tomorrow. You don't need to go and you don't need to write up a petition and get 1,000 signatures and then send that off to Washington D.C. in hopes that the government or these government agents will allow you to become financially independent. No, these are just things that you do yourself. If you really want freedom, you can do these things. You can pick them up and use them tomorrow. So that's the difference between the political and economic, or the begging versus direct action.
Yeah, and why the series is so appealing to me and why I was interested in it is that it does answer this question of what do you do when you give up the political? What are the alternatives? And I think that's a challenge and maybe a frustration of people who see the fact that convincing thousands of people and getting them to vote is very, very ineffective and not a great experience overall, and who are longing for something actually to do that is much more in their control. But it's sometimes hard to figure that out because we're so used to thinking about, okay, let's convince the mayor or the president or the congressman or whatever, write the petitions.
Yeah, if you want something done, it's got to be done through government. Is kind of the common mindset. And Philip, that was another reason why we came out with the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action was, even before the ideology that I adhere to now, anti-political, I still even when I was limited government folk, I still didn't participate in politics. I still didn't vote, and I suggested other people didn't vote too. That was another motivation. Is I tell people voting doesn't matter, voting doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. And the question that would always arise: well, if I don't vote, then what can I do? So rather than back and forth on comments all the time, now I do this, and I've even heard a lot of other folks that I've had on the show, and I've seen it all over Facebook. When they get asked that question without without politics, what can I do? Well, the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action. There it is. It also saves time too, right? Rather than debating back and forth on Facebook or other social media outlets on voting or well, if I don't vote, then what can I do? You just drop this link in there, and almost 100 potential solutions. In finding freedom now. And I guess one other note on the freedom umbrella is it is also again, it's value free, and the efficacy of some of these things has not been judged. So which is why if any of your listeners check that out, libertyunderattack.com/FUDA, FUDA, and they try one of these things out and they have great success with it. Let us know if you try one of these things and you say, yeah, this just isn't possible, it didn't work for me. Let us know on that too. I mean, we're trying to figure out what are the most efficacious means of finding freedom now. So yeah, I guess just to kind of bring that back around. Yeah, there is that common mindset. Well, if we want something to change, it's got to be done through government, and that's just not the case. That's just unfortunately the society that we live in at this time.
Yeah, a great example. I read a study recently, and they're predicting that the number of cars that people own will go down dramatically. They're saying 99% in the next 10 years because of car sharing services like Uber and Lyft and similar, Libre Taxi that you mentioned recently.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, man, oh my God, if this is going to be like, because you had the climate change and, emissions question going for decades. And if this will be the thing that really just, takes that question off the table, after all the regulation and pressure and lobbying and all that effort put into it, if this will be the thing, that's so delicious. And a great example of direct action going way further than the political means. Whichever one of these services succeeds or it becomes dominant doesn't even matter that much insofar as the impact on the environment, even if it's not 99%, that'll be something to see for sure.
Yeah.
So as far as the efficacy goes, I mean, how you approach this question is that you brought on a lot of guests. And most of them were doing the strategy, right? So you at least have, that kind of guarantee that there's this one guy who's doing it or researched it or something like that.
Yes, that is correct. But I will say though, efficacy was obviously something that the listeners could ascertain from the interview, and obviously it was pretty easy to see. Like for Financial Independence and Jake DeSillis, you can tell that it's very efficacious. Or for perpetual traveling. With Pete Cisco, that's efficacious just from hearing him talk about it. But generally, the interviews we had were to kind of just provide our listeners with the necessary information to make a decision on what forms of direct action will best suit their lives. So yeah, efficacy obviously came into it, but it was more so kind of like introducing these ideas, how to go about doing it, what are some things you should keep a lookout for. What's the best process for becoming financially independent, as an example. So yeah, that was kind of so efficacy wasn't necessarily the focus, but it obviously came through in I would say in all of the interviews.
Yeah, and it's very much a question of personal preference and circumstances and skills and all of that. So it's good to just have the directory there, and then you can. I did the same, I read the list. I was like, yeah, I like this, and this, and that's where you begin. So, did you know at the beginning that was this your approach? Like, okay, I want to find out more information, so I'll just go and interview a bunch of people, or did that kind of evolve naturally? How did that happen?
Yeah, so we put out the very first Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action, the first edition. We're on the third now, and there's no plans to do another one of those. But yeah, we put out the food. I think it was like August of 2015. 2015. Yeah, I think that's right. August 2015, and it was about a month after that when I decided to go forward with it. And yeah, it was from the very start. It was because, like I said earlier on, I mean, there's most of these things I really didn't know much about. And with some of the other ones, like I knew what Bitcoin was, but at that time I just didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know what a blockchain was. I didn't understand it at all. So in order to get the listeners the necessary information, I had to interview people. Like there was no other way around it. Especially considering one broadcast a week. Like if I go into like, okay, we finished the first one on committees of safety. Now this week we're going to be talking about financial independence. So if I was interviewing Jake DeSillis, I'd have to like, cram a whole week's cram all of financial independence into 1 week. And that just wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't have been good information. I probably would have been off on a lot of things. And obviously I hadn't done that yet. Whereas Jake DeSillis has. So it obviously it was a lot smarter to have him on than to try to suss it out myself on live radio.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, we can talk about the method a little bit later, but how did it impact you? What did you learn from it? What strategies did you adopt? Like, how has it changed your life?
Yeah. So I mean, I honestly couldn't have envisioned, the impact that this would have, on my life. Obviously I knew because we had the FUDA, that's the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action. I'm just going to call it the FUDA from now on. We had the FUDA, and I mean the amount of options on there was just ridiculous. I mean, there's like tenfold amount of economic means solutions or direct action than there are of the political means. So I already knew there was this market selection of direct action. But the direct action series really showed me that. I mean, talking to some of these folks who their focus is primarily one of these things, and just hearing about how much it impacted their life and bettered it. I mean, it's honestly crazy. And you don't get that reaction from folks like with the political means, like, oh, my life has changed in such a fantastic way from becoming a politician. Like you don't really hear that. But like for some of these other things, whether it's financial independence, frugality, whether it's survivalism, van dwelling. I mean, these things drastically changed individuals' lives. They really did. Now some of them aren't. Most of them aren't easy to do at all. But freedom, freedom is. I think freedom is worth that cost, and they did too. So I think that was probably the number one thing. How much direct action really improved their situations. And then also, I mean, going through that series. I mean, over 40 hours of interviews. So I got a good dose of education on all of these subjects. So I mean, just having that knowledge, and then I mean, just being able to make decisions on what forms of direct action I want to partake in. I mean, yeah, that it was definitely huge. So as far as what I've kind of adopted since then, now I've broken this up into 3 categories: pursuing, which means I'm working towards it, but haven't achieved it yet; doing, which is pretty self-explanatory, I'm doing it right now; and have done, which indicates things that I have already done. So pursuing, Vanu, the topic of our last discussion. Financial independence, definitely not there yet, but I'm making those first initial steps. Things that I'm doing right now, utilizing the trivia method. I'm sure your listeners are aware of the trivia method. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric, obtaining and vetting information, starting from first principles. Alternative independent media. That's you, Philip. You're participating in direct action right now.
Yay!
There you go. Counter economics, otherwise known as agorism. I'm doing that now. I'm not going to go into any details, obviously. Cryptography, encryption. I love encryption. I've been using it for a couple of years now. If you like privacy, encryption is definitely necessary. Libertarian role modeling, keeping actions consistent with the principles espoused. That's another thing on the FUDA. And things that I have done. I went on a circuit of political field trips back in mid-2015. I canceled my voter registration. And I withdrew from public school attendance back in high school. Now, I will say for that last one, I put it on there because I have done it, but it had nothing to do with freedom or looking to better my education. It had nothing to do with that, but I did do it, so I put it on the list.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you do good things, for different reasons, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of potential in the methodology itself, and I don't know if you thought of it or not, but I think this approach that you took, like you said, okay, I have this list, but I want to learn more. Like I have this problem, I want to find some solutions, but I know that it would take me a lot of time to learn it on my own. This going about and interviewing a lot of people, I think it could work out for a number of different applications, almost anything. So I can envision someone saying, okay, I want to learn about, I don't know, gardening, let's say. And the easiest way of doing it is, I mean, at least it's not the easiest way, but it's probably a very, very effective way is to, okay, let's find 5 or 10 or 15 thought leaders in the field and see if I can get an interview from, off of them, and then I can publish it somewhere. And yeah, there's a good chance that they will say yes, especially if you had the presence before, but sometimes even if you didn't, often like just having enthusiasm helps a lot. I've seen a bunch of podcasts. The first 10 interviews are recorded before it's ever anything's ever released. So I'm very excited by this, and I'm curious, what do you think about it, and how did you go about it? How would you recommend, someone wants to deepen their knowledge, how would they do this?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. It's like I guess a great thought process and kind of fleshing that out, because I hadn't really thought of that in that manner. But yeah, if you're trying to learn about a subject, I mean, interviewing somebody there are a bunch of websites, there are books, and there are probably forums on these subjects. But there's nothing better than having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, and if a question arises, you can just ask them, and then also it's benefiting others too. Like a lot of these things that we discussed in the Direct Action series, no one's really ever heard of before. So if I were to have just pursued these things on my own, that would have been a large number of people that hadn't ever heard of these ideas. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good observation. As far as as far as going about this process, I mean, at that time I really didn't think of it in this manner. But I guess, doing this off the cuff here, as far as recommendations, if someone were to go down that path, obviously finding those individuals is kind of crucial if you're going to interview them, right? So I would say social media is obviously the best. That's where I found most of the people that I was going to have on the show. People were sharing their work, or they posted an article about it or whatever. There were a few interviews where I actually I found them through like keyword searches on Google, finding the right individuals, and it's really not hard to find people. It isn't. That was probably the easiest part. The hardest part was, since this was kind of a series, and and with like 25 or 30 interviews, I had to schedule like a month or two ahead of time. So that was the hardest part. There were a couple. I'd sit down like we got done with it, or like before I actually started the DAS. I'd sit down, like one night a week, and just sit there for like 2 hours sending out emails, because not everyone's going to respond, right?
What was your rate there? Like response and actual interview rate? What would you say?
It was pretty good, actually. I mean, I think there were only a handful of interviews that never happened. So, probably like, let's say like 30 out of 35, whatever that comes out to. So that it wasn't a bad rate of response, and actually getting the interview done. So that was the hardest part. I mean, it took a lot of time, and to try to schedule things a month in advance, and we only did the show on Sundays, so it had to happen on Sunday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So to try to, the first couple of months came together pretty easy, but after that, for some reason, it got more and more difficult. But yeah, I mean, that's the first piece of advice I'd give if you're trying to do like one of these 10 to 15 episode series or whatever to learn about a subject. You just got to stay vigilant, because I mean, people are busy. Some may not be interested in doing it. Just stay vigilant. You'll get her done. So yeah, that's the first part. And as far as the actual interview series, I mean, one fantastic thing, I guess side benefit that comes from doing this, and this is something I noticed, Philip, I used to be really bad at interviewing people. I was terrible. I've gone back and listened to some of the interviews, and it was just, I had an outline of questions, and I would literally just ask the question, get the answer, and move on. Most of the time, not offering anything in return, and oftentimes, jumping radically from one subject to another. So it wasn't good radio. So that was another side benefit that came from doing this Direct Action series was, I mean, it was basically a 6-month interviewing bonanza. So I got much better very, very quickly. And that also has an impact on outside of podcasting. When I talk to people, it helped me to ask the right questions. Being direct and and asking questions with clarity to get the response that you're kind of looking for, right? So it had far, like, even just outside of podcasting. I mean, just personal development, kind of the focus of your podcast. Definitely, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of side benefits that come from outside of just doing the education portion. And speaking to the education part, I mean, no matter what subject, like, again, you said gardening. No matter what subject someone decides to do this with, to use this process on, I mean, I don't care what subject it is. I mean, they're bound to come out the other side with a far better understanding of the subject matter. And recording interviews, talking to people is a lot more fun than. I mean, for me personally, we're all individuals, right? Interviewing people is more fun than reading a form or reading a book, because I like the communication aspect. It's more entertaining. So that's kind of another thing too. So hopefully that answers your question. I know I kind of jumped around a little bit, but was there anything that I didn't answer?
Well, let's see. So I just want to say that most people don't. I think most people underestimate how easy it is to get to talk to most people. I think if you show interest in the subject that they're good at, like whether it's podcasting, I mean, there can be a wholly different route where you don't do this, but you just talk to people, you buy them a coffee or something, and you do it that way, and it's just for you. You can do it that way too. But either way, if you show interest and you say, hey, I want to learn a little bit from you, I think most people will say yes, and I think most people don't know that. What was your experience was 30 out of 35, Shane. So I'll take you agree with that. But how did that go down? Were you surprised by it? Were you expecting it?
I mean, no, I really wasn't surprised. I mean, because you're exactly right. I mean, if someone's an expert on something, they like talking about it. It's what they're passionate about. So, I mean, even if you shoot them a few shekels or something, they'll probably do it. And most of the time they probably would without you even paying them money, because you're interested in what their expertise is. But yeah, I wasn't surprised, but I guess what I was kind of surprised about was, there were, I know one off the top of my head, but I had a couple of pretty big guests on the show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lenora Skenazy. She was the lady, she let her child go on a subway in New York, like just let the kid go for like all day. She kind of started the free range parenting movement, sort of thing. And she's been on like mainstream television, like The View and stuff. I don't know if exactly The View, but like she's been out there, like everyone knows who she is. But yeah, I actually got her to come on Liberty Under Attack Radio and talk about free range parenting. So that was one I was kind of surprised about. I had to pay her anything. She just came on and talked about it. So yeah, I think you make a good point there. You'd be surprised, like I guess the folks that you can actually get an interview with, or the folks that you can actually talk with, because that was kind of mind blowing. Because I know I told my parents, they're familiar with her, and I was like, yeah, I'm interviewing her, and they're like, what, really? So yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind too. You can probably book most people that you want to get on the show. So
right. So I'm guessing you knew some of these people. Like, were there people you didn't know at all and had no contact with, or how did that go down? How did you reach out to strangers, basically?
Yeah, so probably about 20% or so. 20% of the individuals I've already had on the show before. So like there's already that line of communication. Just hey, you want to come back on? Yeah, sure, let's do it. So those ones were particularly easy. Now obviously there were some that I really had no idea. Like Commander Dale Brown from the Threat Management Center. Never talked to him before. So yeah, that was just kind of like a cold call, so to speak. I just shot him an email, and he responded and said, yeah, let's do this. Brett Venant from the School Sucks Project. I mean, I was familiar with him, but he didn't know me. He didn't know me from Adam. But so yeah, I got him on the show. And yeah, I mean, just email for most of them. I just emailed them, or if I was friends with them on Facebook, I just shot him a message. It was actually it was really easy to actually get in contact with him. It was just the hard part was scheduling. So yeah, that's pretty much how I did it.
Yeah, that's so unexpected because you would think like, okay, the big part will be actually getting them, right? Like figuring out the strategy and I don't know, how do you reach out to them and things like that. Significant public figures, you just reached out to and work. And I think that's great. Did you also use referrals when you like, did that help at all? Like, oh, I know X and he introduced me to you or something?
Yeah, definitely. For Brett Venot actually, and I forgot about this, but yeah, I emailed him before, I think before the Direct Action series to have him on the show, and I never got a response. But I've had Daryl Becker on the podcast quite a few times, I think 3 times, and also Nick Hazelton and Brett. But Brett knows them both very well. So yeah, Daryl, said, hey, yeah, Shane wants to have you on. You should do this. So let's see. Yeah, there's definitely some help with referrals. That's the only one I can really think of. Oh, actually, no. Kyle Reardon, our LUA creative consultant, actually sent me a handful, probably 3 or 4 people. So yeah, referrals definitely helped. Yeah. So I mean, just as if you're getting a job, knowing somebody is always a good thing, and that can help you out for scheduling interviews with experts in particular fields as well.
Yeah. Fun fact, by the way, if I remember correctly, that's the biggest source of employment. Like most employees are hired by being referred and not by sending in their CV to some job listing on a website. That's like the least effective. That's just
yeah.
But yeah, that's great. So did you also find new people this way? Like, did someone tell you, oh wait, Shane, I know someone who would make sense you didn't think of?
I mean, yeah. Again, Kyle Reardon was he was a co-author of the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action, the FUDA, and yeah, I mean, he sent me a lot of recommendations, like, hey, you should consider this person for the DAS. So I mean, yeah, people, even if they just, I came across this guy's YouTube channel, you might want to consider having him on the show. I mean, yeah, that's I did have. I will say for preparing for the DAS and for also keeping it going. I did have. I mean, it was pretty popular. It was a pretty popular series at that time. So yeah, I'd have people message me and say, hey, you should consider having this person on to talk about X. This isn't on the FUDA yet, but you may consider adding it after you talk to him. It's like, okay, cool. So yeah, I had a bunch of recommendations from people, made it a lot easier. But then again, I told you about halfway through I was ready to be done with it. But yeah, the recommendations just kept coming, so had to fulfill those. But so yeah, referrals and just people saying, hey, reach out to this person, be a great discussion. So I mean, it was a bunch of different ways of finding these people and getting in contact with them. But again, that was the easy part. I could have continued the Direct Action series for 2 years if I wanted to, I'm sure. But all good things come to an end, right?
Yeah. There's diminishing returns as well after some point. You covered the best stuff, and yeah, you kind of have to go to less effective things or less I don't know. Topically related stuff. So it's been some time since you finished. Did you experience any benefits from all of this networking, from having talked to all of these people?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I remember back when I started the radio show back in February of 2015. Yeah, I didn't really know anybody. And obviously the networking kind of started before the DAS, but yeah, now I have a quite a large, I guess, network of people that I know, and I still communicate with most of them. I've had someone back on the show again, and yeah, I've seen a lot of benefits from that. Definitely a lot of benefits. I mean, most of them are interested in the podcast and the work that I put out. And I like the work that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been mutually beneficial between me and the folks that I had on the show, and then also the network of folks that I have on social media, and then also a lot of those folks that I've actually met at freedom festivals. I've actually shaken their hands. So yeah, outside, I guess that's another benefit too, right? Whenever you interview somebody on a podcast and you kind of get acquainted. I mean, I've had my co-host Jason Paradise. Yeah, he started just listening to the show. Now he's a co-host. And I mean, yeah, we're buddies. We go riding together, and we hang out now. So I mean, the benefits that come from networking and interviewing people on podcasts or for something like I do with the Direct Action series, yeah, the benefits can be quite exponential. And I didn't even think of that whenever I started doing it. It just kind of came out of the conclusion of it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing. In interviews, they're not a major focus of Valiant growth, but even the ones that I've done, some of them are people who I know, like you in this case. But yeah, some of them are completely new people, and it often leads to some kind of, well, not often, but sometimes leads to some kind of relationship forming out of it beyond just the interview. And that's great. I met a lot of great people that way that I'm in contact with pretty regularly.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to talk about some of the strategies, maybe your favorite ones, nutshell them a little bit, and then they can go to Liberty Under Attack and the listeners, and they can see the rest?
Yeah, definitely. So there are about I have like 4 top strategies, and actually I kind of envision this question. I've done a couple of interviews on Direct Action, and this is always one of them and one of my favorite questions. But so yeah, I guess these are kind of my top 4 strategies. My preferences on what's best, what ones are most efficacious in creating and finding freedom now. So the first one would be entrepreneurship strategies generally. Like the financially independent, early retirement, just strategies like that. Whether it's cryptocurrencies, investing, whatever it is. I mean, the more of the financial stuff. I think that could be. I think that's all very, very important, and is one of the best ways. Financial freedom goes a long way. If you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay your next bill, if you don't have to worry about how you're going to do whatever, that's having that financial stress out of the way. Can be mentally freeing and also physically freeing too, right? Then Vonu, which we talked about in the last episode. I think Vonu encompasses. I mean, if you look at the second edition of the Fuda, a lot of the items underneath Vonu were like in a different section, like survivalism or something like that. But Vonu combines probably 10 different methods of direct action. I think that has huge potential in the future for personal freedom. Crypto anarchism. Which is essentially, it's just folks that use technology to crush the state. Essentially, is one way to put it. But that'd be things like encryption. I'm a huge advocate of encryption, and I'll probably said that a couple times this episode already. But it's very, very important. Cryptocurrencies are, I think they're kind of undermining the financial system, which I think is fantastic. And then also things like I'd say 3D printing. I don't know if you're familiar with Cody Wilson, who printed 3D printed a firing pistol, the Liberator pistol. Mm-hmm. Then he's come out with the Ghost Gunner, which is which you can CNC machine a lower receiver of an AR or an AR-15, which is pretty crazy. So those would be some examples. I mean, another one would be like. Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends was he has an altcoin, a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin, BIP as in Paul, not the big one. And he was the project was initially to host the domain name services, the like libertyunderattack.com or valiantgrowth.com. He was trying to get that set up on the Bitcoin blockchain so that they could never be censored. So those would be aspects of crypto anarchism, or like the deep web. Some of the stuff you can do there. I mean, those are all kind of examples of crypto anarchism, and I think that has a great potential, and freedom now, and also in the future, because the state, so the free market creates these technologies, and the state has to adapt. So it is an ongoing battle, but I think it has huge potential for personal freedom, and also even more, and not like or even more widespread too. Getting people interested in the idea of, like decentralized services and things. And then the last one would be agorism, which was developed by Sam Konkin. It came out in the 70s, I think. And that's trading in the black and gray markets. So things that are illegal but not immoral. It's also called counter economics. So essentially what he kind of proposed was, the counter economy starves the state, and then once the state lashes out, once the agora outcompetes the state and the state lashes out, then you smash it. So it's starve the state, then smash it. So those are the four that I see as being most viable. And agorism, I don't think that the second part of that, the outcompeting the state part, is necessarily going to happen. I don't think people really see that as kind of a potential now. But as far as financial freedom, not having as much money stolen from you at the end of the year, or not having as much money stolen from you in the form of taxes, going into lines of lines of employment where, or maybe not employment, but lines of production where you can make a lot more money than in the typical 9-to-5 job situation. So I do see agorism as a viable strategy for personal freedom and financial independence. So those would be the four that I see as most valuable. Lots of great stuff there on the FUTA, libertyunderattack.com/FUTA. And it's Philip. It's really designed our intention was to provide a literary resource that can be used not only to help individuals begin their journey, towards self-liberation, but also as something that can be returned to as a home base of sorts. So if you or one of your listeners, goes there and says, I want to try X, and they try that for a while and they say, hey, this just isn't going to work out, unfortunately. Well, just return and go pick something else. And you can just keep doing that. You can combine them to fit your own lifestyle. And what's best about it is there's no begging the masters. There's no subjugation. You can do these things. You can take the initiative to do these things right now without asking for permission. So I think that's what's most valuable about direct action, and I think it will become more prevalent here in the very near future, even more so than it already is.
Great. Shane, thank you for coming on Valiant Growth. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and yeah, I absolutely recommend everyone to go check out that list, see what you're doing, see what you could do, and learn more about actionable things that you can do right now without permission.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Philip.
Those of you who find this as exciting as I have, you'll be glad to hear that I've put together a step-by-step action plan on how to embark on your own interview learning system journey. And you can find it at valiantgrowth.com/53. It's 10 steps that you can just take the list and go in order. You don't have to figure out everything from scratch. If you want to learn something in a specific field, and you've also been planning on creating your own corner of the internet, be it a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel, or maybe you've been thinking about writing a nonfiction book of your own, I say this is an excellent opportunity to get a framework that you can hang your hat on and just get started with step number 1. So again, you can find that at valiantgrowth.com/53. I'm sure some of you have been wondering about what's been going on with me personally. There's been a pretty long gap. I will talk about that after I release the next and final interview that's been undeservedly sitting in the archives. Hopefully, it might take less time than this one did.